Today, I have 50 Sapphic books that you may want to add to your never-ending TBR. But first, what is Sapphic? Now, for anyone who may not know, Sapphic is a broad umbrella term that typically describes women, non-binary, and feminine-aligned individuals who experience attraction to other women and femmes. The word is inspired by the ancient Greek poet Sappho, who wrote emotional and romantic poetry about women on the island of Lesbos. This means that Sapphic stories may include lesbians, pansexuals, bisexuals, queer, fluid, and non-binary people. This video was inspired by Ivy the Geek Goddess, who created the year-long Sapphic Bingo Challenge. When I saw her announcement video, I immediately started looking for books to add to my pile of possibilities. As I was doing this, I realized there were so many Sapphic books that I wanted to read that I ended up adding 2 books for each prompt as an option. Now, I'm going to only be focusing on standard prompts to make my life a little bit easier, but some of the books that I did end up choosing might still qualify for the hard mode prompt. You're going to want to check that for yourself by going back to Ivy's video, which of course I'll have linked down below in my description box. So if you see a book you've read, let me know in the comments if I should run to pick it up or if maybe I should not even bother reading it at all. On the other hand, let me know if this video has brought a new book to your attention. I've tried to pick books that I haven't seen in every other book recommendation list, so let me know how I did. Now, if you've been here before, you know I'm not a big romance reader, so I've mostly chosen books that are outside of that genre. This means that the FMC is Sapphic, but the main plot overall may not be focused on her romance or relationships. It also means that if there is a romance plot, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be ending in a happily ever after. So keep that in mind if you were kind of hoping for romance-related recommendations. That's not really what you're going to be getting here. Maybe 1 or 2, but the majority probably not. This challenge actually runs from June 2026 to May 2027. It started in June for Pride Month, and I'm just really late making this video, but I think it's never too late to jump on the bandwagon here and add some more Sapphic books to your TBR. So because this challenge started in June, I actually have 1 square marked off on the bingo board already, but I'm still going to give you 2 options because I still kind of really want to read the other book that I selected for it, so we'll see. But the first square's prompt is a BIPOC MC. And for that square, I chose The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School by Sonido Reyes. Now, a piece of information about the author that I learned, because as you might notice, their name at the bottom says Sonora Reyes. This author actually changed their name and transitioned this year to Sonido, so they do now go by he, him, and they, them pronouns. This was actually a 5-star read for me in June. I loved it so much. This is a YA book about a Mexican-American girl who is in the closet and goes to a Catholic school that is very rich and very white. In this book, you do get all the first love feelings of being a teenager in high school, but there's also so many added layers to it. Our main character has to deal with racism and microaggressions for being one of the very few people of color in her new school. The story also touches on how difficult and scary it might be to come out of the closet to some of your friends and family, especially from a Mexican household with religious parents. This book features interracial couples, including Mexican, Black, and Chinese. It has lesbian and bisexual representation. It has mental health representation, and this was also written by a Mexican-American queer author, so you have that own voice experience when reading this book. Another thing I loved about this book is the love interest's name is Bo. But yeah, I loved this author's writing so much that immediately after I finished it, I just did a deep dive on everything else that they've written, and I'm pretty sure I added every single one of their books to my TBR. Now, that being said, the second book I have for the BIPOC MC prompt is The Luis Ortega Survival Club, also written by Sonido Reyes. Now, this is another YA contemporary queer romance book, but this one is said to have a John Tucker Must Die feel to it. So I guess there is this one boy that kind of does these girls dirty and they kind of go after him. Now, this story also has mental health representation, as our main character is described as an autistic girl who never talks. The premise of the story is that she gets attention from this boy, Lewis, who she ends up hooking up with at a party. And then after that, he basically is a jerk and allows the rumor mill in school to spread. And now everybody is looking at our MC as easy. Eventually, this other group of girls kind of approaches her, letting her know that she's not the only one that this guy has screwed over. So they kind of gang up together and form this club to kind of get him back. And in the midst of all that, you might be thinking, well, where's the Sapphic aspect of this? Well, our main character ends up developing a crush on one of the other girls in the Revenge Club. This one sounds so fun, and I absolutely love the cover art, so I'm really excited to read it. Moving on to row 1, square 2, our prompt is a 5-star prediction. Now, the first one I chose for this prompt is The Final Strife by Sarah L. Arifi. I have been so excited to pick this book up ever since I watched Covers with Cassidy go on and on about how great this series is, and I actually didn't realize that our main character is Sapphic. Now, this is one of those books that I don't think her relationships are the primary focus of the story, as this is a fantasy, but from what I saw, her relationships in the book involve both men and women. Now, I usually try not to buy an entire series before I've even read book 1, but I just couldn't help it with this story. I feel like it is such a 5-star prediction for me that I went out and bought the entire trilogy. So I already own all 3 books. Have I started it? No. But do I know I'm gonna love it? Yes. From what I understand, there is an empire of people, and each class is determined by the color of your blood. Red is the blood of the elite, of magic, of control. Blue is the blood of the poor, of workers, of the resistance. Clear is the blood of the slaves, of the crushed, of the invisible. The only thing I know about this story is there's basically a resistance that's trying to overthrow the empire, and I believe we're following 3 different girls, one from each blood class. I'm just going to take a second to show you the cover of each one of these books, because honestly, that's what sold me. All I really had to hear was this was a story about resistance, overthrowing an empire, and seeing the beautiful cover art of these characters. The fact that it sounds like she's either bisexual or pansexual is just the cherry on top. The second option I have for 5-star prediction is Affinity by Sarah Waters. I actually have no idea what this book is about. I just know that Sarah Waters wrote my favorite book of all time, and I trust her. I've owned this book for years and years, and I don't know why I have yet to pick it up, but I do know that it has an awesome cover. Sarah Waters writes historical queer fiction. It looks like our main character is an upper-class woman who attempted to commit suicide. She's actually begun visiting a women's prison. This is Victorian London, so keep that in mind. But she's visiting the prison now to take part in rehabilitation and charity work. During her continuous visits to the prison, she becomes fascinated by one of the inmates who is apparently innocent, described as an enigmatic spiritualist. Now, this innocent inmate was actually imprisoned after she performed a seance that actually killed an elderly matron and left a young woman deeply disturbed. Our FMC, who starts off as a skeptic, becomes increasingly more fascinated by the world of ghosts and unruly spirits after talking to this innocent inmate. And eventually she becomes so invested that she begins to devise a plan to help this inmate escape prison. The synopsis kind of reminds me of those people that get really invested in writing letters to serial killers or murderers in prison and start to have these like relationships with them. It's kind of giving those vibes to me. For the third space in row 1, we have a new to you author. My first option for this space is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. Now, this is another historical fiction book, which honestly is one of my favorite genres, but this time it takes place in America in 1954. I feel like the 1950s is so glamorized, but when you think about it, that was kind of only for upper-class white people. But this book actually talks about how it was not safe for 2 girls to be in love at that time, especially not in Chinatown. This was a time when you're dealing with Red Scare paranoia, and with our main character being Chinese American, she is dealing with the fear of her father being deported back to China. The second option I chose for this prompt is I Love You, Don't Die by Jade Song. Interestingly enough, this book also is set in Chinatown. However, this is more of a horror lit fic. Now, right off the bat, initially what drew me to this book is the title. Our FMC is somebody who has always been fascinated and obsessed by the idea of death. And honestly, I feel like I can relate. It says that our FMC lives above a funeral parlor, and her whole life consists of death. She thinks of death in her work, in her life. She has trouble maintaining relationships or meaningful connections with people. She feels like the only inevitable thing in life is death. But I guess one day she gets on a dating app and she kind of ends up getting herself into a throuple. And it sounds like this new relationship that she's found is just the kind of love that she needs. However, she starts to, I'm assuming, sabotage it like she always does. It sounds like she gets this idea that everything in life is very temporary and hollow, and what's the point? I feel like I'm not exactly sure how this gets into horror, unless the label of horror is literally just because of all the macabre and death aspects, but just from reading the synopsis, it does sound like it leans a lot heavier into literary fiction, but I guess we'll see when I actually read the book. Square number 4 in row 1 is a 2026 new release. The first book I'm choosing for this one is Girl's Girl by Sonia Feldman. You've probably seen the cover for this one because I feel like it's everywhere right now. This is the author's debut. The cover alone screams summer coming of age. It gives me the vibe of like Now and Then, which is one of my favorite films. We have this trio of 15-year-old girls who are the best of friends, and then at some point there's a kiss that happens between two of them that changes everything. It also sounds that we're getting an adult point of view of our main character as she looks back on her childhood and how that moment kind of changed everything. This one line from the synopsis says, "Loving one person, Mina learns, can change the way we love everyone else, including ourselves." This one is a literary fiction, only sitting at around 256 pages. My second option for this prompt gives me a very similar vibe. This one is Long Island Girls by Gabrielle Korn. Now, this one is very coming-of-age romance set in 2005. A lot of the synopsis is giving nostalgia. I'm truly a sucker for anything that gives nostalgia, so I'm really excited to pick this one up. It sounds like this line in the synopsis really sums it up. Moving between the raw intensity of youth and the clarity of hindsight, Long Island Girls captures the ache of growing up, the messiness and joy of queer identity, and the way music, memory, and desire shape who we become. From the cover and the synopsis, it sounds like our main character is very involved in music. It talks about them going to these indie rock shows, so I'm getting this vibe of the alternative scene in 2005, which is very appealing for me. The next square is Queer Booktuber Rec. The first option I chose was They Bloom at Night. I believe the author's name is Trang Tan Tran, but forgive me if I mispronounce that. But this recommendation I got from Elena in Wonderland. I actually had no idea what this book was about when she recommended it, but I absolutely love the cover, and I've seen a lot of people reading this. This is a horror novel. There's this strange red algae that has come about in the water after a hurricane, and I believe it said the main character sells this algae to the harbor master, and somewhere along the way there are monsters drowning people, and she teams up with the harbor master's daughter to find out what's going on in this town. I feel like I'm not doing it any justice, but honestly, the cover alone really makes me want to read this book. The next option I chose for Queer Booktuber Rec was a recommendation I got from another friend of mine, Steph, from Coffee Over Apples. Now, Steph recommended this to me about a year ago, and she told me that this was her favorite book of all time. I don't know if that's changed by now, but at the time, this was the book that she told me that I just had to read. This is How You Lose the Time War by Max Gladstone. This one is a sci-fi romance book. And I feel like this is another one that's kind of a mystery to me, but all I know is we have two agents that I believe don't have specific names, but they are feminine presenting and they are from two different factions. This book, from my understanding, is very time jumpy, loopy, going in and out of time. This is only 209 pages, so I kind of want to go into it somewhat blind. And I feel like just telling me that there are time loops and time travel and rival agents going in and out of time, I feel like I'm already sold and I'm interested. Especially because we have a romance between the agents on top of that, so that's going to be really interesting. So this is going to be perfect for anybody that's interested in like a rivals to lovers story, is what I'm assuming. Moving on to row 2, the first square is a late bloomer main character. Now my first one for this one is Kiss Me Maybe by Gabriela Gomez. I was definitely drawn to this one because the author is Mexican American and I loved the cute cover on this. I have to preface, I'm not much of a romance reader, but the synopsis got me because it sounds like the movie Never Been Kissed. Now this was a perfect book to slot into this space specifically because the synopsis actually says that the main character is a late bloomer who goes viral for posting a video about how she's never been kissed. She identifies as ace, so we do have some asexual representation in this book, which is cool. Now the premise of the story is that there's going to be this big huge scavenger hunt and the winner of the hunt is going to claim our main character's first kiss. My second option for late bloomer main character is My Darling Dreadful Thing by Johanna van Veen. And I don't know if you might think this is a stretch or not, but when I googled this, it did say our main character was a little bit older, maybe in her late 20s, I believe, and I don't think she's ever had a relationship with a woman, so I counted it. Maybe a stretch, I don't know, but I really want to read this book anyways. So our main character, Ruse, has this spirit companion that only she can see. And Ruse likes to host seances, and in attendance to one of her seances is a young widow named Agnes. And they eventually start forming this relationship with each other, this mutual attraction, and then someone is murdered. And now, due to having a history of hysteria, being poor and alone, Ruse has now become the main person suspected of murder. So now she's forced to prove that someone else or something else did it in order to keep her freedom. I'm a big fan of a gothic horror, so I'm really excited to see what happens with this one. It also feels like a bit of a murder mystery and has a lot of supernatural elements, so this one feels right up my alley. Our next prompt is borrow a book, and because this one is so vague and open, I felt like I could just slot in any books here that I was just really anticipating reading that didn't quite fit into another prompt. So the first option I put for this one is Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. This one's a bit of a novella sitting at 120 pages. All I really know is that this story is about two lonely young women who connect with each other through an internet chat room in the 2000s. Now, once again, anything that has to do with the 2000s and nostalgia, I'm all in, especially if you also label it a horror. Because I'm not exactly sure what happens in this book, I would definitely say check your trigger warnings because I think this author is known for having some really gruesome body horror. I'm not sure because I have yet to read one of his books, but it has been highly recommended to me, so I am excited to pick this up. My second option for this prompt is going to be Love Galaxy by Sierra Branham. Now, this is a book I will for sure be borrowing from Ivy, who created this whole challenge, because she is entering this book in our traveling annotated book club, where we're going to pass around books and annotate them and then pass them back to each other. So I will be borrowing her copy, annotating it, and then passing it back to her. The way that she described this book was basically a dating game show, but it takes place in space, and our main character, I believe, is Sapphic. I want to say they're competing for the love of the prince, but instead she falls for the princess. So it sounds messy and it sounds exciting. I've heard that this book is actually really good, and I'm personally a big fan of those reality TV shows where they have the dating games, you know, like Are You the One or Love Island, and I'm pretty sure based on the title of this, Love Galaxy is maybe a play off of Love Island? I don't know, maybe that's where they got the inspiration to write this. I'm not sure. I actually haven't watched Love Island myself. I'm a big Are You the One fan, but I feel like if I actually sat down and watched it, I would be completely into it and want to binge every single episode. So again, it's funny that I don't like to read romance, but put it on TV and I'm all about it. Looking a little deeper into the synopsis, it is labeled as romance and sci-fi, but as I was reading, it looks like some of the contestants actually end up turning up dead, so it looks like there's going to be some foul play. as well, on top of the cutesy romance dating show element. It's also showing that it is book 1 in a series called The Imperial Broadcasts. I don't know if these are going to be interconnected standalones or if this is a continuing series, like you're following the same characters throughout the series. I don't know anything about it. I actually just found out it was part of a series right now from looking at it, so you might want to look into that or keep that into consideration when picking the book up. The next prompt is nonfiction, and the first option that I chose for this prompt is A Two-Spirit Journey by Mani Chakabi with Mary Louisa Plummer. This is described as an extraordinary account of her life as an Ojibwa Cree lesbian, from her early, often harrowing memories of life and abuse in a remote Ojibwa community riven by poverty and alcoholism. Chakabi's story is one of enduring and ultimately overcoming the social, economic, and health legacies of colonialism. Later on in her life, when she was older, in 2013, she led the first gay pride parade in her adopted city, Thunder Bay, Ontario. The second option I put on this list is So Gay for You by Leisha Haley and Kate Menig. Now, back in the day, I was a huge fan of the L word. I mean, who in the community wasn't? Shane and Alice were obviously my favorite characters, so seeing that they wrote a book together all about their lives behind the scenes as friends and talking about the show and just life in general, I mean, no explanation needed. Once I saw this book at Barnes & Noble, I was like, this is going straight to my TBR. I have to read this at some point. I will say the show kind of falls off in the later seasons, but we're just not going to talk about that. The next prompt is a book that's set outside of your country. And for this one, I'm choosing Necessary Fiction by Elagosa Asunde. After I heard Kelsey talk about this on her channel, I had to immediately add it to my TBR. When I found out this book followed multiple different characters, one of them being Sapphic, I knew that was my excuse to throw it into this bingo board. This is a fiction novel that takes place in Nigeria. It says that the book follows a large cast of characters as they seek out love for self and their chosen partners, even as they risk ruining relationships with parents, spouses, family, and friends. These characters grapple with desire, fear, time, death, and God, forming and breaking unexpected connections in the process, unveiling how they know each other, have loved each other, and had their hearts broken in that pursuit. I'm going to go ahead and link her video down below because I'd highly recommend you listen to her speak about it, because that is what really gravitated me towards this book. Kelsey is somebody I absolutely trust. Like, if she likes a book, there is like a 99% chance that I'm going to love it too. So the fact that this one was really impactful for her really makes me want to pick it up more than anything. The next option I have for this prompt is Sunburn by Chloe Michelle Howarth, and I believe this takes place in 1990s in Ireland. Sunburn is described as an astute and tender portrayal of first love, adolescent anxiety, and the realities of growing up in a small town where tradition holds people tightly in its grasp. This is a literary fiction / romance, and it's about this girl who doesn't really want to follow the normal conventions that are laid out by tradition in her hometown. She actually finds herself heavily infatuated with a girl over the summer, and this infatuation develops into this devastating romance. Eventually, she has to choose between one life or the other, as she ends up living this double life in order to kind of hide what's actually going on with her. Only one of these choices is going to offer her true happiness, but clearly it's a difficult decision to make. I love a first love story. I love a coming of age story. I love a queer awakening, a queer coming out. I love any book that is flavored in this way. So this is another one that I think I'm going to really love and enjoy. And for the last box in row 2, we have the prompt Witchy Sapphics. My first option for this prompt is Muneca by Cynthia Gomez. This is a new release that just came out June 2nd of 2026. It looks like this one is a gothic queer horror historical fiction, all the buzzwords for me. And then on top of all of that, our main character is Mexican American. Yes, I feel like I'm going to love this book. This takes place in 1968 in Oakland, Our main character, Natalia Fuentes, has been hearing rumors about the beautiful Violeta Miramontes, the young heiress to Spanish colonial wealth, and has been left paralyzed by a mysterious illness. But Nati knows a thing or two about witchcraft, and she is certain that this is the work of dark magic. This is a debut novel by this author, and I love that it says that there are going to be moments that chill your bones and warm your heart. So I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of a cozy horror? I'm not sure. Now, speaking of debut novels, my second option for this category is The Lamb by Lucy Rose. So what I know about this one is we have a mother and daughter who live out in the woods, and this kind of gives that witchy vibe of women out in the woods doing mysterious things. So I guess it's a little bit of a stretch because I don't know if they're exactly witches or witchy or magical or anything like that, but that kind of gives me a witchy vibe, right? The synopsis of this book says it's a tender coming of age tale, but from what I've heard about this book is there is some cannibalism and there is a sapphic romance. It says that little Margot must confront the shifting dynamics of her family, untangle her own desires, and make a bid for freedom. Moving on to row 3, we have Tattooed Love Interest, and for this one I'm choosing Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenya. This is a book that I have been meaning to go back and finish for like a year now. I started this book last year and I read to the 40 to 50% mark, and this is absolutely a 5-star read. There's no question about it. I love this book. The only reason I stopped midway through is because I wanted to buy my own copy and then go back to the beginning and annotate it because I thought it was that powerful and I wanted to remember and highlight all the important moments in this book. However, once I put it down and paused, it got a little bit difficult to pick it back up again. So I'm using this opportunity to throw it right back onto a challenge because I also wanted a chance to talk about it once again. So this is a near dystopian novel that's all about the prison system. Chain Gang All-Stars is basically a gladiator tournament where prisoners are sent out to engage in this 1 versus 1 gladiator style battle to the death in front of everyone in America. It is broadcast, it's this big event, and people love to watch it. Now, the thing is, if you're able to defeat enough people, you can earn your freedom. The problem is, nobody's ever done it before. Well, there was actually one person that did it, but people suspect that it was all a setup just to give prisoners hope and be more willing to actually participate in this tournament. Since we're on a roll with debut novels, I have to say that this was also a debut novel by this author. It's so difficult talking up all of these books because as I'm talking about each one, I just want to stop immediately and just read that book right now. But I still have so many to get through, so hold on. Okay, so my second option for the Tattooed Love Interest prompt is One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Now, this is a romance novel. But the reason why I'm so excited to put this one on the TBR is because it has to do with a merging of times. There's a bit of magical realism in this, and I'm a big fan of magical realism. Our main character gets on a subway train, and she sees this really attractive girl, this old school punk rocker on the train. This girl isn't just an old school punk rocker, she's actually somebody from the 1970s. So that already has me fascinated. I'm like, how did this girl from the 1970s get here in present time? I need to know what happens. And yes, I Googled it and she has tattoos, so it fits the prompt. But I know that Ivy really likes this story. She likes romances a lot more than I do. I have to know if it works out. I have to know if she goes back to the 70s or what's going on and are they able to be together because of this weird time issue. And also, who just doesn't want to read about a punk rock lesbian from the 1970s? That sounds amazing. For our next prompt, we have Indie Author. And this one was really hard, but I like the books that I ended up choosing for this prompt. I do think that they took me the longest. But my first option is Reverse Tomboy by Otto Anon. What really intrigued me about this story is it's about a transgender woman who begins to transition medically. However, she's not somebody who wants to present as feminine. She is more of a tomboy. So it really talks about her struggle of being a transgender female, but wanting to still present as more masculine. She's dealing with the expectations from other people that expect a transgender woman to be hyper feminine, where that's not really who she is. So she's dealing with her identity and how to present herself and how she feels most comfortable being a woman who doesn't conform to the social norms of being overly feminine, especially as a transgender woman. It looks like this is a very short little story sitting at only 118 pages. I believe it says it also includes a small collection of poems and a brief essay on trans femme butch identity. The next option I have for this one is Something's Wrong with Maddie by Taylor Z. Adams. Literally on the cover of this book, it says a Sapphic horror novel. And the first line of the synopsis is, Maddie died, Piper refuses to accept it. One blood ritual later, and Maddie is back, undead, starving, and nothing close to resembling human. This is one of those stories that talks about loving somebody so much that you do anything not to lose them. So she's literally keeping her undead girlfriend because she just can't let her go. As morbid as this situation is, it did come across as kind of funny to me, which makes sense because it does say in the synopsis this is kind of a comedy horror, and honestly a part of me can't blame her. I mean, if you love somebody that much, don't you want to do anything to keep them with you? I don't know that I would go this far, but I feel like this is going to be a funny situation to read about, especially when it says that she's trying to keep her undead girlfriend away from suspicious neighbors and a nosy cop. Next up, we have The Free Space, and now this was another option where I got to choose 2 books that I just wanted to throw into the bingo chart. Now, my first option for this had to absolutely be Tipping the Velvet by Sarah Waters. I mentioned this in the beginning of the video that this is my favorite book of all time. Now, this is the only book on this list that will actually be a reread. I'm using this book for the Sisterhood of the Traveling Annotated Book Club that I was talking about earlier, and this is going to be a book that I am going to go back, reread, and fully annotate, and then mail it off to my friends who are going to then annotate it and then eventually pass it back to me. I have made so many of my friends read this book because I absolutely fell in love with it when I first read it, and it has stuck with me ever since. This is a historical fiction sapphic romance coming of age book. This book takes place in the Victorian era, and we follow a woman named Nan King. Now, at the start of this book, she's just a young little oyster girl in a small town, and along comes this traveling show where she sees a male impersonator for the first time. She becomes absolutely infatuated by Kitty Butler, and we get to see her journey and her obsession with Kitty over time. This book is truly unmatched. I have yet to find another book that gives me this sense of enjoyment and love. Like, there's nothing quite like it. Even Sarah's other books have not hit the same way for me. The level of impact this book had is truly one of a kind. I love that we are just taken on this journey of Nan exploring herself and getting to know different people and growing up and growing older over time throughout this book. And just along the way, her relationship with Kitty and how it changes and grows. And this is not like a romance book. This is more a historical fiction about Nan's life and her discovery of self, becoming open to her sexuality, discovering the world outside of her small town. I'm so excited to finally reread this. It's been so many years, and I'm really looking forward to finding out if this is still truly my favorite book of all time. My second option for The Free Space is Some Girls Do by Jennifer Dugan. I chose this one because it just sounded cute and fun. This is a YA contemporary romance where we have a gay track star who falls in love with a closeted bisexual teen beauty queen with a penchant for fixing up old cars. Morgan, our elite track star, ends up having to switch schools because it turns out being gay in a Catholic school is not accepted, so she's forced during her senior year to go to a brand new high school. There she meets Ruby, who has 2 hobbies, fixing up her old 1970s Ford Torino and competing in local beauty pageants. We have Morgan, who is openly gay, and obviously her and Ruby develop feelings for each other, but Ruby is not out of the closet. So they have this kind of dilemma where Morgan doesn't want to be in the closet, but Ruby is not ready to come out. So I think that is a very interesting setup, and I'm curious to see how it develops. Obviously, it's a romance, so we know it's going to pan out well, but again, let me allow the journey to speak for itself, and maybe it'll be a fun and interesting ride to get there. Our next prompt space is Trans Sapphic MC. My first option for this one is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. I feel like this is a very popular horror novel written by a trans female author with trans female main characters. When I was reading through the synopsis or hearing people talk about this book, it was giving me very much Thelma and Louise vibes. I want to say traveling across the country or something. What makes it interesting is they are on a mission to hunt down feral men. Because you see, this is a dystopian novel, and in this dystopia, men have turned into monsters more than they already are now. But basically, something has caused men to go feral, and so they are terrifying. Like, think of all the reasons why you're scared of men right now, and just no inhibitions. They are now feral. They have nothing to hold them back from their animal instincts. So, these two women are on a mission to hunt down these feral men and take care of them in the most gruesome way imaginable so they do not hurt any other people. This book sounds wild, and I'm here for it. The next option I have for this one is Woodworking by Emily St. James. This book is categorized as an unforgettable and heartwarming debut. It follows a trans high school teacher from a small town in South Dakota who befriends the only other trans woman she knows, one of her students. It looks like our main character is a 35-year-old trans woman who is recently divorced. However, she hasn't actually come out as trans to anyone in her life yet. So I take it that she turns to her student, who is also a trans woman, and asks her for advice and help on how she can start to come out as trans and help her to transition. Now, because this student is in her senior year and she's only 17 years old, the last thing she really wants to do is help her teacher transition. However, being the only trans girl in her school, she does remember how difficult and lonely the journey was for her, and so she does have some compassion towards her teacher and does end up wanting to help them out. I just think that is such an interesting setup. I just truly love reading books from different people's points of views so I can really understand different experiences. I think that's the joy of reading, right? Is just having empathy for other people in different cultures or different walks of life or different relationship statuses or different sexualities and identities, and you just get to see so many different people and how they experience the world around them, and I'm excited to pick this book up. It is very highly reviewed on Goodreads. It has an average rating of 4.23 with over 15,000 ratings. So I mean, that sounds like a pretty good book to me. Our next prompt is Pretty Cover. Now, this is a book that I picked up from Barnes & Noble almost 2 years ago now because of the pretty cover. I saw the title and I saw the art and I was just fascinated. So I picked it up and I bought it without even knowing what it was about. Now, since then, I have looked it up and read the synopsis. So essentially, this is a book about a lesbian woman in a relationship with a lot of mental health issues. Funny enough, it's also a debut novel. This is called Please Stop Trying to Leave Me by Alana Saab. Our main character is a writer, and she receives a diagnosis of depersonalization and derealization disorder. It says she's haunted by SSRI side effects, her girlfriend's kindness, her father's incessant calls, and the world that becomes less hazily fictional by the day. One of the lines is, maybe it's crazy not to be crazy in a world like this. I feel like even trying to read the synopsis is making my head spin, but I'm so fascinated. I love a discussion around mental health. I'm curious to find out if the writing style is going to be for me, but I am intrigued enough to give it a try. The next book I chose to put on this list because of a pretty cover is Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. This is a horror romance novella sitting at only 203 pages, and because this book is so short, I feel like the synopsis doesn't give you too much in order to not give the whole story away. All we get from the synopsis is that Rosemary meets Ash at a farmer's market, and Ash is selling all these beautifully decorated soaps and things. Rosemary becomes so infatuated with Ash. It's that feeling of, I don't know if I want to be her or be with her. And as this obsession starts to consume her, it says that she may find she's not the one doing the devouring. I don't know what that means, but I'm intrigued. We've now moved down to row number 4, and our first prompt is road trip. My first option for this one is Whenever You're Ready by Rachel Runya Katz. And I have to say, this might be the one that I'm looking forward to the least on this entire list, only because it is such a contemporary romance that I feel like I'm just not gonna be into it. But honestly, it was so hard to find a book that fit this prompt, so I just kind of went with this one. I specifically gravitated towards this one though because it is a BIPOC author, and I loved that the character art showed BIPOC characters in the story, so I feel like I'm going to be a little bit more intrigued to want to read it. Our main characters, Nia and Jade, have been friends since they were kids, but when their best friend Michelle dies from cancer, they get into this really huge fight for some reason afterwards, and they are now separated. They no longer speak to each other. Nia ends up coming across a letter that Michelle wrote that states that she really wants Nia and Jade to go on this Jewish history road trip that they had all planned to do before Michelle passed away. So of course Nia and Jade decide to put their differences aside and fulfill their friend's last dying wish. Come to find out that Nia has been in love with Jade this whole time since they were teenagers, and Jade has never wanted to acknowledge those kind of feelings because she never wanted to ruin the boundaries of the friendship. So along this journey, of course, there's going to be complications and hiccups and confessions of love and overcoming differences. And it says this book is about family, friendship, and the kind of first love that could last a lifetime, if only you are willing to take a chance. So yeah, I'm not completely sold that this book is for me, but I do think that it is maybe worth a shot. I don't know. The likelihood of me actually reading this book is pretty low, but if this is interesting for you, I definitely think you should pick it up, and you can let me know if it's worth reading for somebody who's not big into contemporary romance. My second option for the road trip prompt is Girls, Girls, Girls by Shoshana von Blankensee. Now this one seems a little bit more my speed, as it's labeled a queer fiction coming of age, and it's set in the summer of 1996. This one is another debut novel about a young woman who, caught between the expectations of others and her own evolving desires, is forced to make a series of fraught, life-altering decisions. It looks like our main character and her secret girlfriend decide to drive from New York to the fabled queer town of San Francisco, California. Hannah's excited to get away from her devout, Orthodox Jewish mother and be in San Francisco where she can be openly gay with her girlfriend and around other queer people. However, the financial strains of living on the West Coast leads the girls to stripping, which is yet another secret that Hannah has to keep from her family back home. Eventually, the two girls meet other people and their lives begin to broaden. Hannah eventually meets Chris, who is an older butch lesbian who takes a liking to her, and because Hannah hates stripping, she proposes this escort arrangement with Chris. And on the other hand, Hannah's girlfriend starts meeting other queer friends, and so their lives begin to separate a bit, and you kind of start to see how their lives are evolving and changing and what's going to happen from there. Now this sounds way more fascinating to me. I know the road trip aspect is only probably in the beginning and most of it probably doesn't take place on the road, but I'm still counting it, so that works for me. Our next prompt is manga. And at first this was a really difficult one for me as well because I don't read a lot of manga, but once I found my two options, I was all in. I'm actually really excited to find these and pick them up because I am absolutely intrigued. So my first option is The Guy She Was Interested In Wasn't a Guy at All. Talk about a on-the-nose title, but this was written by Sumiko Arai. And I mean, come on, the cover alone has me heavily interested. So here's the premise. Fashionable and upbeat high schooler Aya loves listening to rock, but no one else seems to share her interest until she meets a cool, stylish employee at a CD shop. Dressed in black from head to toe, he has this air of mystery about him, and his taste in music is impeccable. Aya falls hard for him, not knowing her crush is actually her female classmate, Mitsuki. So yeah, I love it. I'm already obsessed. I want to read this right now. The next option I have for this prompt is Bloom Into You by Neo Nakatani. And this one sounds really cute, and I think it's really popular from what I've been reading. So it says that Yu has always adored shoujo manga and yearns for the day when someone might give her a love confession that would send her heart aflutter. Yet, when a junior high school classmate confesses his feelings to her, she feels nothing. Disappointed and confused, Yu enters high school, where she sees the confident and beautiful student council member, Nanami. When the next person to confess to Yu is Nanami herself, has her romantic dream finally come true? I feel like both of these manga options, I'm really hoping that there are animes for these stories as well, because these are stories that I would probably love to watch. Okay, moving into the next prompt, which is translated work. My first option for this prompt is The Unworthy by Agustina Bastarrica. I know a lot of people loved her debut novel, which was Tender is the Flesh, but I haven't read it yet. To be honest, I have not heard good things about this book at all. Has it deterred me from reading it? A little bit, I'm not gonna lie, but I'm not ready to just unhaul it. I want to see for myself, especially because it's so short. From my understanding, this is a very weird, dark book about a coven of sisters. Although it feels like it should be set in the past, I believe this is set in modern day, which threw a lot of people off. So I'm gonna go into it knowing that part at least. I'm gonna have to read the synopsis because I don't want to butcher it, but I think it has to do with kind of like a culty vibe where they want to become these like enlightened members of the sisterhood. Let me see. From her cell in a mysterious convent, a woman writes the story of her life in whatever she can find, discarded ink, dirt, and even her own blood. A lower member of the sacred sisterhood deemed an unworthy, she dreams of ascending to the ranks of the enlightened at the center of the convent. Okay, just reading that alone, like, I'm super intrigued. So I honestly don't know what it is about this book that people don't like. Maybe it's the writing style, maybe it's confusing, maybe it's just too weird. I'm not sure. Okay, going on, it says, outside, the world is plagued by catastrophe. Cities are submerged under water, electricity and the internet are non-existent, and bands of survivors fight and forage in a cruel, barren landscape. Inside, the narrator is controlled, punished, but safe. Oh, so I guess this is a dystopian novel, and they are trapped inside of this convent, kept safe from the outside world. However, they're fed all these weird lies and rules. This is interesting. But when a stranger makes her way past the convent walls, joining the ranks of the unworthy, she forces the narrator to consider her long-buried past and what she may be overlooking about the enlightened. As the two women grow closer, the narrator is increasingly haunted by questions about her own past, the environmental future, and her present life inside the convent. How did she get to the sacred sisterhood? Why can't she remember her life before? And what really happens when a woman is chosen as one of the enlightened? The synopsis sounds amazing. I'm absolutely going to read this. Maybe this book is for me. Honestly, a lot of times books that people hate, I end up loving, and vice versa. So who knows? I could just really be into this. Oh, also I should say that this book was originally written in Spanish. My second option for this translated work prompt was also another book written originally in Spanish, and that is Jawbone by Monica Ojeda. It looks like this one is another horror novel, also labeled as thriller, contemporary, and dark academia. Okay, hold on. I have never read this synopsis before. I literally put this on my list because my best friend recommended it to me as a translated work that I should read. Let me read you the full synopsis because I'm like, wait, what? Fernanda and Annalise are so close they are practically sisters, a double image, inseparable. So how does Fernanda end up bound on the floor of a deserted cabin held hostage by one of her teachers and estranged from Annalise? Hold on, it gets weirder. When Fernanda, Annalise, and their friends from the Delta Bilingual Academy convene after school, Annalise leads them in thrilling but increasingly dangerous rituals to a rhinestoned, Dior-scented drag queen god of her own invention. I'm sorry, what? Even more perilous is the secret Annalise and Fernanda share, rooted in a dare in which violence meets love. What? Meanwhile, their literature teacher, Miss Clara, who is obsessed with imitating her dead mother, struggles to preserve her deteriorating sanity. Each day, she edges nearer to a total break with reality. What is going on? I seriously have no idea what is going on with this synopsis. I feel like I need to know what's happening. I'm not like 100% sold, but I'm curious enough that I want to know what's going on because I don't understand. It sounds weird. I don't know if it's exactly my flavor of weird, but it's weird enough for me to maybe want to pick it up. Anyways, let's move on to the next prompt, which is fake dating. This was another prompt that was very hard for me to make selections because of my desire to steer away from romance novels if I could. But I mean, come on, this is literally a romance trope, so I feel like there was really nothing I could do at this point. So my first option for this prompt is Hani and Ishu's Guide to Fake Dating. I mean, here we go again with like an on-the-nose title here, but we do have a BIPOC author, which I love. I was really skeptical with this cover because I feel like the cover art makes it look like these are like 10-year-olds, but I guarantee you from the synopsis, these girls are, I believe, 17 and in high school. So this is a YA queer contemporary romance novel. What I loved about this synopsis the most is the bisexuality representation. So we have Hani, who is easygoing and popular, and she comes out to her friends as bisexual, but her friends decide to invalidate her identity by saying that she can't possibly be bi if she's only dated guys. So in order to defend herself, Hani actually blurts out that she's actually in a relationship with a girl. And the girl that she names is Ishu, who is a total opposite of Hani. Ishu is not popular at all, but Ishu agrees to pretend to be in a relationship with Hani in order to become more popular. So they engage in this fake dating situation, which of course is going to develop into some real feelings along the way. But relationships are complicated, and some people will do anything to stop two Bengali girls from achieving happily ever after. My next option for this prompt is Everyone in This Room Will Someday Be Dead by Emily Austen. Hear me out. This one is probably a stretch, but I'm picking it anyways because I don't care. I have desperately been wanting to read a book from Emily Austen, and I love the title of this story, so I just have to read it. I mean, listen to the first line in this synopsis. Gilda, a 20-something atheist, animal-loving lesbian, cannot stop ruminating about death. Sold. Also, just the way that the synopsis is written, this already sounds like it's gonna be funny. Desperate for relief from her panicky mind, girl same, and alienated from her repressive family, she responds to a flyer for free therapy at a local Catholic church and finds herself being greeted by Father Jeff, who assumes she's there for a job interview. Too embarrassed to correct him, Gilda is abruptly hired to replace the recently deceased receptionist, Grace. This sounds like a contemporary literary fiction with a lot of mental health representation. I'm just excited to know more about this character. She seems interesting. Probably a little bit frustrating for me because she doesn't speak up for herself, and I'm a very outgoing, blunt person. I don't know, this could be really heartwarming, this could be really funny, maybe both. Oh, but the part with the fake dating, it doesn't really say it in the synopsis, but when I Googled it, it did say that she was dating a guy to pretend to be straight so she didn't have to reveal that she was gay because she's working in a Catholic church. So she has this like fake relationship going on. Now I'm wondering if Google lied to me, but I think that's what happens. But also, it looks like there's also this element where, but then another element on top of that is it looks like there's some suspicious activity surrounding Grace's death. So now Gilda, our main character, is going to be forced to reveal the truth so that she doesn't get tangled into all of that mess. So I feel like there's kind of a lot going on in this book, but it seems like a good character-driven story. Gilda to me sounds really interesting, and I'm excited to get into her head. I feel like a lot of it is going to be really relatable, especially with her anxiety. The next prompt we have is a friend pick. And for this prompt, I got 2 recommendations from my best friend. The first one is The Name Bearer by Natalia Hernandez, which is book 1 of the Flowers of Prophecy series. This is actually a story I knew nothing about until she gifted me the entire trilogy. This is a YA queer fantasy novel. In the world of this story, there's a monarchy, and the name-bearer's sole job is to deliver the names of the future monarchs using the flowers of prophecy. But one day the name-bearer refuses to name the child that's presented to her because there is actually another child who will bring peace if they are named instead. Now, because she doesn't do her job, she is looked on as a traitor and forced to join this sect of warrior women to protect her. With these women, she finds friendship, found family, and even love. She begins to train with these warrior women and sets out on her own personal quest to find this unnamed prince so that she could clear her name and bring peace to her realm. It sounds like a book about a really strong female character, and I'm excited to get into this fantasy series. The next option that I have for friend pick is Collateral Damage, a Sapphic erotic thriller by Chassis. Now, this book is long. This is 538 pages, so I really hope there's an audiobook for this. It's said to contain graphic and disturbing scenes, and it is a heavy-seated Stockholm syndrome with no guaranteed happily ever after. So of course I was immediately intrigued. The cover art looks like a clown, and I love that already. Now, I don't know if this is going to end up being something I'm going to want to actually read because 1, it's way too long, and 2, I don't know how good it's actually going to end up being. But I was intrigued by the trigger warnings because I love a book with a lot of trigger warnings. So it looks like we have 2 points of view. We have Puppet and Puppeteer. So Puppet says, "My life as I know it was taken from me, murdered in cold blood, now left with nothing but scattered pieces of my once perfect life, and a shell of the girl I used to be. Stuck with a monster who carries a hollow heart, a broken engine, a clown with an act for vengeance in blood. I am intrigued by a female clown villain character." So I don't know. I feel like this is interesting. I also feel like it could be really cheesy. We'll see if the writing is for me and I'm able to get through that many pages. If there's no audiobook, the likelihood of me actually reading it is slim to none, but if we have an audiobook, there's gonna be a chance. We'll see how it goes, but I feel like I can already tell you that this is one of the books that I'm less likely to actually get around to reading. Okay, we have made it to the last row of the bingo board, and the next prompt is audiobook. I feel like this is another really vague, easy prompt that I could fit literally any book into, and the book I chose for this is On Sundays She Picked Flowers by Yaya Schulfield. Now, I can distinctly remember Rochelle from Good Morning Dreamer, as well as Bree from Locked Booktition, talking about this book and how good it was, telling me that I need to pick this up immediately. Because I trust both of their tastes, it is one that I absolutely had to add to this list. I'm already seeing that this is labeled as horror, gothic, queer, fantasy, and historical fiction, which is checking off so many boxes for me. This is a sinister, surreal, Southern Gothic debut. Another debut? A woman escapes into the uncanny woods of Southern Georgia and must contend with ghosts, haunts, and most dangerous of all, the truth about herself. It looks like we have a main character who tries desperately to escape her haunted past. She has an abusive mother that she's trying to get away from, so it seems she goes off into the forest to escape and finds shelter in a house haunted by a violent past. It says that our main character, Judith, ends up soothing the ghosts and the haunts that are in this house, and she ends up living there for 13 years, growing into this healer woman, until one day, another woman approaches the house, a beautiful and unsettling woman that steps into her life. The presence of this new woman into her home really catches our main character off guard, and she is forced to confront the calls of violence that are rooted in her bloodline. I feel like this is another 5-star read waiting to happen for me. My next option for audiobook is This a Cry for Help by Emily Austen. Now, I told you I was excited to pick up an Emily Austen book, and as a result of that, I added 2 of her books onto this list. This is a book that was brought to my attention after watching a review from Sarah from Wicked Reading. Listening to her talk about this book just made it sound so interesting to me. This is a literary fiction novel that focuses on the importance of libraries. This book follows a librarian who comes back to work after a mental breakdown, only to confront book-banning crusaders in an empowering story of grief, love, and the power of libraries. Our main character is also married to a woman who runs a book binding service. So this is just a book lover's book. Who doesn't want to read a book about libraries and book binding? I just feel like that's going to be so interesting for me, especially around my love of books. The next prompt on this board is Friends to Lovers. My first option for this prompt is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I've never read this book, but I have watched the movie. I don't remember the story in perfect detail, but what I do remember from watching it is that it was a very powerful story. The synopsis states that The Color Purple depicts the lives of African American women in early 20th century in rural Georgia. Life wasn't easy for Celie, but she knew how to survive, needing little to get by. Then her husband's lover, a flamboyant blues singer, barreled into her world and gave Celie the courage to ask for more, to laugh, to play, and finally to love. The synopsis on Goodreads states that The Color Purple broke the silence around domestic and sexual abuse, narrating the lives of women through their pain and struggle, companionship and growth, resilience and bravery. Like I said, I've seen the movie and it was phenomenal, so now I think it's truly time to pick up this Pulitzer Prize winning novel and see where that amazing film adaptation came from. The second option that I have for Friends to Lovers is Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. This story follows a young musician into an elite, beauty-obsessed world where perfection comes at a staggering cost. Our main character comes from a family of talented musicians who fled China in the wake of the Cultural Revolution, but when her parents get into an accident and become debilitated, she's forced to abandon her future as a musician and in turn gets a job with a beauty company instead. Now, this is no ordinary wellness store. This is a very high-end store in New York City that offers her entry into the world of the elite. It seems that she quickly becomes involved with the niece of the owner, all while she begins using these beauty products that start to change her outward appearance. But it says that something sinister lies beneath. Now, this book is immediately making me think of the movie The Substance that came out in 2024. However, this book was written in 2023, so it's not a ripoff or anything, but it is giving that same vibe. I feel like this is going to be another interesting commentary on the world of beauty and what it truly costs us as a society that we put so much value into the way that we look, our weight, our hair color, our eye color, and how we constantly are trying to change and make ourselves younger than we actually are and things like that. So I love a story that leans into that idea. So I'm curious to see where this is going to go. This is a horror literary fiction book. Are you still with me? We have 3 more prompts to go, which means 6 more books in total. The next prompt we have is a femme MC. The first option I have for this prompt is Flirting Lessons by Jasmine Guillory. Now again, this is a romance novel, but I was thoroughly convinced when I saw one of my favorite bookstagrammers recommend this book. Right off the bat, we have a BIPOC author and BIPOC main characters. We have a main character in her late 20s who wants to live a little. She wants to have hobbies and date around and just enjoy her life. However, our MC Avery doesn't have a lot of experience when it comes to dating, whether it be men or women. Now, on the other hand, we have Taylor Cameron, who is Napa Valley's biggest flirt and champion heartbreaker. Now, Taylor has just broken up with her most recent girlfriend, and her best friend has bet her that she can't make it until Labor Day without sleeping with someone new. Now, the interesting premise here is that Taylor ends up agreeing to give Avery flirting lessons. She feels like this is going to keep her busy while also helping this other girl out. And of course, while this is all going on, they end up developing feelings for each other, but Taylor can't act on them because of this bet, and Avery, I'm guessing, is probably not confident enough to realize that Taylor is actually into her. Look, I feel like I'm not always in the mood for a romance, but when I am, I have to have books lined up that I think that I'm actually going to be interested in. So, having this on the list is going to give me an option for when I want to turn and grab one of those cutesy romances. So, it sounds interesting enough to me when I'm in the right mood. The second option I have for this prompt is Big Swiss by Jen Began. This was a book that was actually recommended to me in my comments in one of my previous videos, so I had to go check it out and see what this was actually about. This is another one of those books where the synopsis sounds kind of random, but it also has me intrigued. So Greta lives with her friend Sabine in an ancient Dutch farmhouse in Hudson, New York. The house is unrenovated, uninsulated, and full of bees. Greta spends her days transcribing therapy sessions for a sex coach who calls himself She becomes infatuated with her newest client, a repressed married woman she affectionately refers to as Big Swiss. What? One day, Greta recognizes Big Swiss's voice in town, and they quickly become enmeshed. While Big Swiss is unaware Greta has eavesdropped on her most intimate exchanges, Greta has never been more herself with anyone. Her attraction to Big Swiss overrides her guilt, and she'll do anything to sustain the relationship. Oh, okay. That's interesting. That's messy. This is all bad. You can't start a relationship based off a lie or omitting information. Like, this is, oh gosh, this sounds like drama. I need to read this. For our second to last prompt, we have cozy read. Now, I'm not a big cozy reader, so I wasn't super excited about this prompt as I didn't have many options to place in it automatically right off the bat. So, I felt like the most obvious Sapphic cozy read out there was going to be Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Admittedly, I have never really wanted to pick up this book. To me, a cozy read kind of sounds boring, so I'm really skeptical. But a lot of people really seem to like this book, and the fact that I'm a lover of D&D does have me a little bit intrigued. This is a fantasy book that feels like it's set in a D&D campaign, but instead of our battling adventurers, we get to see the life of one of the shopkeepers. After a life of bounties and bloodshed, Viv is hanging up her sword for the last time. The battle-weary orc aims to start fresh, opening the first ever coffee shop in the city of Thune. Did you like this book? Did you find it boring? I'm so curious, but at the same time, if I never read this, I would also be fine. I don't know, maybe I'm missing out, and I just need to give it a chance. What do you think? My next option for cozy read is The Dragon Has Some Complaints by John Wiswell. Now, this is a book that literally came out 2 days ago on July 14th. Now, I have yet to read anything by this author, but I do know he's also the author of a book called Someone You Can Build a Nest In, which I believe was very popular. Now, this book caught my attention in one of the many readathon discords that I've been in this year. Somebody mentioned that they were so excited to pick up this book when it came out, and immediately I had to go look it up. It says that this is a heartfelt and humorous fantasy. Now, we have a dragon who once had 4 heads, but after some kind of accident, he now only has 3. And because they are so different, it says that they engage in a whirlwind of bickering every single day. When a nearby battle goes awry, our three-headed dragon sneaks into an elite dragon rider academy in order to get free food and a warm bed. He ends up actually getting chosen by one of the riders and ends up feeling this need to protect her. This cozy fantasy intertwines epic battles with loving friendships, sharing an utterly unique perspective on what it means to be a monster. Now, I'm not really seeing in the synopsis where the Sapphic aspect comes into play, but I know I googled it and it is there. It's probably just a subplot which wasn't big enough to add to the overall main synopsis on Goodreads, but I promise you it's in there somewhere. It is labeled as queer and LGBT in the genre tags, if you don't believe me. But anyways, let's move on to the very last prompt on our bingo board, and that is a genre you love. Now, as much as I also love historical fiction, I decided to go with horror for my genre. And the first option I chose for this prompt is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kluwer. I just realized this book is so popular and I have no idea how to pronounce this man's name. I apologize. But if you are living under a rock and you've never heard of this book, from what I know is that a lesbian couple moves into this house and they are one day visited by this family who says that they used to live in their home. So one of the women that lives there decides, yeah, sure, you can come in and see the house. She's very nice. She doesn't want to deny them. They seem like nice people, I guess. So she lets them in. And from there, they don't want to leave. This book is categorized as a horror thriller. And I don't really want to know anything further than that because I am so intrigued by that initial premise and it already sounds terrifying. Like, where is this going to go? Why aren't these people leaving her house? What's going on? And also horrifying because why are you letting people into your house? Absolutely not. Stranger danger. But yeah, all I know is this book is really hyped up. A lot of people really love it. And that does scare me because I feel like a lot of times when things are really overhyped, my expectations get too high and then I am disappointed. So I'm trying not to get too worked up about it. I'm just going to keep it as I'm intrigued and I do want to pick up a book from him. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now, the second option I chose for this final prompt is A Game in Yellow by Hailey Piper. Hailey Piper is a Bram Stoker award-winning author. She's a trans woman, and she often writes about a lot of trans female characters. I recently watched a video from Alexis Fully Booked, and she was talking about her experience reading this book, and she went into a lot of detail around the play that is in the story. So in the book, this couple is in a bit of a rut, and one of the women comes across a play called The King in Yellow, and this play is actually a real play, as Alexis pointed out. I love that she did the research about this because I think that is so fascinating that this play actually exists. So I guess the lore behind the play is that if you read this play, you could go insane. So I feel like in this story, that's exactly what starts to happen. It's said that if you read a little bit and pull back, it gives you just enough adrenaline rush to enter this state of euphoria, which leads one of our main characters tiptoeing the line between lust and the brink of madness. It says that as the line blurs between the world Carmen knows and the one that she visits after reading from the play, she begins to desire more in this other world, no matter what horrors she brings back with her. We did it. We made it through the 50 Sapphic books that I'm adding to my TBR for this upcoming year. Are any of these books on my list, books that you are planning to read also? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this recommendation video, please let me know by liking, subscribing, and hitting the notification bell so you can see any new upcoming videos that are coming out for me. Also, if you haven't already, use your hype button to let other people know that this is a good video to get some awesome Sapphic recommendations. And of course, go and check out Ivy's original announcement video for this challenge. Again, it's linked down below. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next video.